Hey fellow birdies, and welcome to another edition of Mr. Songbird's Writing Mukbang. Pleasure to see you guys again. Now, it's been a while since I've done one of these, so if I screw up, I sincerely apologize. Now, this is... sorry. It's a delicious feast made by my beloved wife. This is going to be a shrimp and sausage boil. Technically it's called low country boil, but frankly it looks amazing. I'm going to get started. Now, let's see now. This is a lemon butter sauce, I believe. Excellent. Now, probably shouldn't have done that in one bite. 2 bites. I probably should have spelled that up a bit. But first I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping, so to speak. First, this week's video is, well, now. Next week's video I'm planning to film the first Harry Potter book, the end of chapter 1, probably chapter 2 as well if I can pull it off. Of course, if we have another issue with that blasted tornado warning, there's not a whole lot I can do about that. But I can try to avoid filming on Wednesday. Now, the week after that, I got something fun for you guys. Well, not that the other thing isn't fun, but this is fun too. Ed Cole, those of you observe our channel's moderation may have seen him. He likes to do a lot of writing on the side, and he's volunteered to let me use some of his work to demonstrate to you guys the editing process and what are some of the things to look for when you're editing. Now, first though, let me have some of the sausage. Excellent. Now, one question I saw from a recent commenter is, how do you start a story? Let's see now. How to put it? Starting a story is pretty simple. You just have to say something that the reader finds interesting. One thing, like a bit of action, a bit of comedy, two characters flirting with each other, or dealing with a jerk flirting with them. All fine options. There are the most important thing is what to avoid when starting a story. You see, one thing I see a lot of with poorly written stories, especially with beginners, is they tend to like to start it with one or two things: description of the character or exposition. Like, how did we get here? And I can understand the reason. Like, your audience wants to know about the character, right? They want to know what happened, right? That's not entirely accurate. You see, your audience, if the story is interesting, are willing to wait quite a bit of time before being told, how things happened. Now, not to say you can't do it, but you probably want to keep it to a very small amount. Well, got a little bit of the sauce on me. I definitely like the Creole. Now, I want to make clear, it's not to say you can't start with a description of your character, whether you can't start a story with a bunch of explanations in exposition, but that you should avoid it when possible. Here's why. When you're starting a story with a character describing themselves, what you're not doing is starting with anything that's actually interesting to the audience. Because your audience doesn't care if the character's got red hair and waves flowing down their back. At least not until they've gotten intrigued with the story. For example, in the first book of the Path of the Magi series, working on book 2, like I said, in the first book, I don't actually describe the main character until the second chapter. And even then, a lot of it's by inference. I suppose what I'm trying to say is, you want to avoid giving your audience an info dump when they start the story. You can weave in like little bits and pieces. For example, maybe the main character is being bullied by a bigger, stronger guy, and she thinks about how she hates how she has to look up at him in order to meet his eyes. Or maybe he's jealous over the guy he's interested in, his boyfriend, and how he can never measure up. Like he's too reedy, too skinny, and frankly, like stuff like that. Like basically, when you work the details in, it feels like it's part of the story that can work, but you want to avoid. His name was Ben. He had red hair, big blue eyes, and wore a vest. Like I said, it's not that you can't include the description if it fits the moment, but that you shouldn't, just start with the description. Now, exposition is another, beast. Let's say I read an interesting concept that basically, in the first 10 pages, you're allowed 2 paragraphs of exposition. And what do I mean by exposition? Basically, the character, stopping and trying to explain everything that's going on. Sorry. It's not that exposition is necessarily a bad thing, but here's what you're going to find if you get to know, if you get used to writing. Your audience will wait a very long time to find out why things are going on. There you go. Like, if you, noise, like, how to put this? Let's say you're writing a zombie, book. If, the story starts with the characters, on the run while zombies are chasing them down. They're running out of bullets. Your audience is not going to care how they got there. They'll just be excited and enjoying what they're watching. Then you can have them get back to base and have their boss chew them out about how these idiots nearly got everyone killed again. As opposed to say, this is so and so, and they were trying to infiltrate here for some food, but then they got caught by the zombies. Now, that said, pretty much anything when it feels natural to the character can be worked into the story. So if the character were to, kind of be like, yeah, go on a, hike, he says. Sneak into the zombies' base, he says. Easy time. What an idiot. They'll be and that's perfectly fine. But readers don't like explanations and exposition starting the story. She made quite a lot. I was surprised she would eat this all herself as well, because she made the same recipe for herself. But you can go very far without actually explaining anything. Well, not anything, but everything. Like, your readers will get a lot of information just from inference. And here's what I mean by inference. Let's say that the guy meets a girl, and that girl looks him up and down and says, "Hey there, cutie." You're definitely assuming that they're probably either in a relationship or that she's attracted to him. Similarly, the same is true for your own story. If the main character in that zombie story is like 5 bullets left, not nearly enough, then they were using guns and they're fighting zombies. Well, assuming that they were just fighting a zombie, of course. What that means is you can communicate a lot to the reader without actually taking the time to say, "Hey, here's what's going on." Because when you do that, it's like explaining the joke to someone. Which I think I like. I like the example of a autopsy, or not an autopsy. Yeah, an autopsy, basically, or a dissection. That's what the expression was. Explain the joke, and if our exposition is generally like in dissecting a frog. You understand how it works, but the frog's dead. Now, once the audience has been hooked into it, that's when you can add in a little exposition. Like, let their curiosity build, and then explain to them that everything was fine until the aliens came in and cast a magic spell that caused a bunch of zombies to pop up. I don't know, it's zombie fiction. It wouldn't really work very well in reality because, like, any kind of how to put this? I remember reading the tropes for World War Z. I thought it was a very interesting series, but the problem is, in order for the zombies to become at all a reasonable threat, the military has to be complete idiots. Because zombies a horde of them may be dangerous to one person or a small group, but against trained opposition with explosives, guns, rapid fire, nothing is terribly dangerous there. It's kind of hard to be in danger from something that can go at basically a little over shamble at best. Now, what does that mean for your work? If you start the story with something happening, if you start the story with, like the character, just dodging a bite heading for their head, your audience isn't going to mind at all. Well, I'm going to take this out because I need to rub my nose. And I'll admit, it's something that I have an issue with myself. Sometimes where I've had one in the past anyway. Hope I don't still have as much. Where I'd be like, okay, the reader needs to know how they got here. They don't need to know that. They don't need to know the full backstory. They don't need to know, what caused the change. Just show them a changed world or a fascinating world. And then you can explain, how it got there. Like, pretty much only, like, Star Wars can get away with a long, like, a paragraph long exposition at the start of the story, and that's mostly because it's grandfathered in. And don't get me wrong, I love the Star Wars, at least the original series. Although the newer one wasn't bad until there were some issues with the directors. Spoiler warning: when two directors have very different ideas for how the story's going to go, and they're going back to back, it's a risky choice, in my opinion. But yeah, as a general rule, your audience will understand a lot of things. As a general rule, your audience will understand a lot of things just from inference without you having to actually say it. And you should certainly be willing to use that against them. Like, maybe that flirting couple aren't actually flirting because they're interested in each other, because they're trying to tease each other before they literally stick in the knife. Like, I'm trying to remember the name of the book or movie, but there was this one where basically, the two characters, they look like they're a happy main couple from the outside, but then like basically just from inference how they interact, you assume they're happily together. Then you find out that he's abusive towards her. But the inference is towards the first option, but then when you go back, you realize, oh, it was actually a red herring. Now, you as an author have the ability to, influence your reader's opinion, like what they're expecting. And sometimes you see in stories that subvert genre conventions that appear to be following the genre before they subvert at the last minute or at some point early on. Sorry, try and get each one of these. We actually have a towel underneath this plate, which I'm using for multiple purposes. One, it's going to help us in the future videos because I don't know if you remember, but during that baked spaghetti pizza mukbang, or not mukbang, ASMR, I got really ticked off because it kept making this banging sound because it would rock just a little bit when I put my fork down like here. But now look, it's moving but no sound because of the towel there. But yeah, as far as what to start your story with, one piece of advice I read is cut to the part that's interesting. Like if you start writing and then cut off any parts before it gets interesting. Like for example, say the story starts with the character getting ready to head to camp, and then they go to camp and there's a serial killer attacking them. Cut to them arriving at camp because their normal everyday life is probably not that interesting. And yes, sometimes you have to, start it off, slowly. Like if you're doing a romance, you probably want to start it, when they first meet or when the romance starts to begin. Like you want to introduce why they need love to begin with, without actually saying they need love. But as a general rule, you want to start the story in a way that's interesting to the reader. Don't worry about explaining to them everything that's going. If the story's interesting, they'll stick around. And then in chapter 2, you can tell them about how the character has multicolored hair, eyes in the color of a rainbow that are in concentric circles, and has a giant sword that they carry around every day. Which means you're probably a bad Naruto fanfic. But that branch covers everything for now. I hope that my musings have proved helpful to you. But for now, I'll let you go. Have a wonderful day. Bye, fellow birdies.